Good evening, and welcome to Toms River High School North for the Nautical Stars Theater Company's production of Our Town. Please turn off all electronic devices and open all candy now. Thank you, and enjoy Our Town.
This play is called Our Town. It was written by Thornton Wilder, produced by the Nautical Stars Theater Company, and directed by Dr. Penna. The name of the town is Grover's Corners, New Hampshire, just across the Massachusetts line, latitude 42 degrees, 40 minutes, longitude 70 degrees, 37 minutes. This act shows a day in our town. The day is May 7th, 1901. The time? Just before dawn. Sky is beginning to show some streaks of light over in the east there behind our mountain. The morning star always gets wonderful bright the minute before it has to go, doesn't it? Well, I better show you how our town lies. Up here is Main Street. Way back there is the railway station. Tracks go that way. Polish towns across the tracks and some Canuck families. Congregational churches over there. Presbyterians across the street. Methodist and Unitarian are over there. Baptist is down in the hollow by the river. Catholic church is over beyond the tracks. Right here is the post office and town hall combined. Jail's in the basement. Brian once made a speech from these very steps here. Along here is a row of stores, hitching post and horse blocks in front. First automobile's gonna come along in about 5 years. Belonged to banker Cartwright, our richest citizen. Lives in the big white house up on our hill. Over here is the grocery store and Mrs. Morgan's drugstore. Most everybody in town manages to come to these two stores once a day. Public school's over yonder, high school's still further over. 9:15 mornings, noon times, and 3 o'clock afternoons. The whole town can hear the yelling and screaming from those two schoolyards. This is our doctor's house, Doc Gibbs. There's some scenery for those who think they have to have scenery. This is the back door, and this is Mrs. Gibbs' garden. Corn, peas, beans, hollyhock, heliotrope, and a lot of burdock. In those days, our newspaper come out twice a week, the Grover's Corner Sentinel. And this is Editor Webb's house. And this is Mrs. Webb's garden. Same as Mrs. Gibbs, only it's got a lot of sunflowers too. And right here is a big butternut tree. Nice town. Know what I mean? Nobody very remarkable ever come out of it, so far as we know. Earliest tombstones in the cemetery up on the mountain say 1670 to 1680. The Grovers and Cartwrights and Gibbses and Herseys. Same names as are around here now. Well, as I said, it's about dawn. The only lights on in town are over at a cottage by the tracks where the Polish mothers just had twins. Over in the Joe Crowell house where Joe Crowell Jr. is getting up as to deliver the paper. And down in the depot where Shorty Hawkins is getting ready to flag the 5:45 for Boston. Naturally, out in the country, there have been lights on for some time now, with milkings and so on. The townspeople sleep late. So, another day's begun. There's Doc Gibbs coming down Main Street now, coming back from that baby case. And here comes his wife coming downstairs to make breakfast. Doc Gibbs died in 1930. New hospital's named after him. Mrs. Gibbs died first. A long time ago, in fact. She went to visit her daughter Rebecca, who married an insurance man in Canton, Ohio, and died there. Pneumonia. But her body was brought back here, and she's up in the cemetery now with a whole mess of Gibbses and Herseys. She was Julia Hersey before she married Doc Gibbs in the Congregational Church over there. In our town, we like to know the facts about everybody. There's Mrs. Webb coming downstairs to make breakfast, too. There's Doc Gibbs. Got that call at 1:30 this morning. And here comes Joe Crowell Jr. delivering Mr. Webb's Sentinel.
Morning, Doc Gibbs.
Morning, Joe.
Somebody been sick, Doc?
No, just a pair of twins born over in Polish town.
Do you want your paper now?
Yeah, I'll take it. Anything interesting going on in the world since Wednesday?
Yes, sir. My school teacher, Miss Fox, is getting married to a fellow over in Concord.
I declare. How do you boys feel about that?
Well, it's none of my business, but I think if a person starts out to be a teacher, she ought to stay one.
Oh, how's your knee, Joe?
Oh, it's fine, Doc. I never think about it at all. It's just like as you said, always stops me when it's gonna rain.
What's it telling you today? Going to rain?
No, sir.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Knee ever make a mistake?
No, sir.
Want to tell you something about that boy Joe Crowell over there? Joe is awful bright. Graduated from high school here. Head of his class. Got a scholarship to Massachusetts Tech. Graduated head of his class there too. It was all wrote up in the Boston paper at the time. Gonna be a great engineer, Joe was. But the war broke out. And he died in France. All that education for nothing.
Giddy up, Bessie. What's the matter with you today?
Here comes Howie Newsom delivering the milk.
Morning, Doc.
Morning, Howie.
Somebody sick?
No, just a pair of twins born over Mrs. Goloslawski.
Twins, eh? This town's getting bigger every year.
Going to rain, Howie?
No, fine day. That'll burn through. Come on, Bessie.
Hello, Bessie. How old is she, Howie?
Going on 17. Bessie's all mixed up about the route ever since the Lockhart stopped taking a quart of milk every day. She wants to leave him a quart just the same. Keeps scolding me the whole trip.
Good morning, Howie.
Morning, Mrs. Gibbs. Doc's just coming down the street.
Is he? It seems like you're late today.
Yes. Something went wrong with the separator. Don't know what it was. Doc!
Howie.
Children, time to get up for school.
Come on, Bessie.
George, Rebecca. Everything all right, Frank?
Yes, I declare. Easy as cans.
Bacon will be ready in a minute. Sit down and drink your coffee. You can catch a few hours of sleep this morning, can't you?
Mrs. Wentworth coming at 11. Guess the note's about 2. Her stomach ain't what it ought to be.
All told, you won't get more than 3 hours of sleep. Frank Gibbs, I don't know what's going to become of you. I do wish I could get you to go away someplace and take a real rest.
Emily, time to get up. Wally, 7 o'clock.
I declare you've got to speak to George. It seems like something's come over him. He's no help to me at all. I can't even get him to help cut me wood.
Is he sassy to you?
Oh, he just whines. All he talks about is that baseball. George, Rebecca! George!
George, look sharp.
Yes, Pa.
Can't you hear your mother calling you? I guess I'll go upstairs and get 40 wings.
Wally, Emily, you'll be late for school. Wally, you wash yourself good or I'll come up and do it myself.
Ma, what dress shall I wear?
Don't make a sound. Your father's been out all night and he needs his rest. I washed and ironed the purple gingham for you special.
Oh, Ma, I hate that dress.
Oh, hush up with you.
Every day I go to school dressed like a sick turkey.
Now, Rebecca, you always look very nice.
Mama, George is throwing soap at me.
I'll come up and slap the both of you. I will.
Wally, no pushing.
George.
Stop it, George.
Oh, just
He's
please
throwing
here.
soap at me.
It doesn't matter.
Stop it.
Come on.
Sit there. What's like this for school? Sit.
Yes, Ma.
Okay, whatever.
We've got a factory in our town, too. Hear it? Makes blankets. Cartwrights own it and brung them a fortune. Children, now I won't have it. Breakfast is just as good as any other meal, and I won't have you gobbling like wolves. It'll stunt your growth. That's a fact. Put away your book, Wally.
Ma, by 10 o'clock I gotta know all about Canada.
You know the rules as well as I do. No books at the table. As for me, I'd rather have my children healthy than bright.
I'm both, Mama. You know I am. I'm the brightest girl in school for my age. I have a wonderful memory.
Eat your breakfast.
I'm bright too. When I'm looking at my stamp collection.
I'll talk to your father about it when he's rested. It seems to me 25 cents a week is enough for a boy your age. I declare I don't know how you spend it all.
Aw, Ma, I got a lot of things to buy.
Strawberry phosphates, that's what you spend it on.
I don't see how Rebecca comes to have so much money. She has more than $1.
I'm gonna saving it up gradual.
Well, dear, I do think it's a good thing to spend some every now and then.
Mama, do you know what I love most in the world? Do you? Money.
Eat your breakfast.
Don't be late, Come on,
I
out the
gotta
door.
get out to the baseball field. I love you. Thank you for
George, what's your
breakfast.
seat? Whatever. Walk
Come
past
on,
with your
Rebecca.
left
You're gonna make me late. I have
Hold
to
your
walk
hands
you
on the
to
knee.
school.
Stand up straight, Emily.
Sorry.
Tell Miss Foster I sent her my best congratulations. Can you remember that?
Yes, Ma.
You look real nice, Rebecca. Pick up your feet!
Goodbye!
Chick, 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 chick. Chick, chick. Oh, go away, you, go away! Chick, 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 chick. Oh, fight, 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 that's all you do! Chick, chick. You don't belong to me. Where did you come from? Oh, don't be so scared, nobody's going to hurt you. Good morning, Myrtle. How's your cold?
Well, I still get that tickling feeling in my throat. I told Charles I didn't know if I go to choir practice tonight, it wouldn't be any use.
Have you tried singing over your voice?
Yes, but I can't do that and stay on the key. While I'm resting myself, I thought I'd string some of these beans.
Oh, let me help you. Beans have been good this year.
I've decided to put up 40 quarts if it kills me. The children say they hate him, but I noticed they're able to get him down all winter.
Now, Myrtle, I've got to tell you something, because if I don't tell somebody, I'll burst.
Why, Julia Gibbs!
Here, give me some of those beans. Myrtle, did one of those secondhand furniture men from Boston come to see you last Friday?
No?
Well, he called on me. First, I thought he was a patient wanting to see Doc Gibbs, and he wormed his way into my parlor, and Myrtle Webb, he offered me $350 for Grandmother Wentworth's highboy as I'm sitting here.
Why, Julia Gibbs!
He did. That old thing. I was so big I almost didn't know where to put it. And I almost gave it to Cousin Esther Wilcox.
Well, you're gonna take it, aren't you?
Oh, I don't know.
You don't know? $350? What's come over you?
Well, I thought if I could get the money and get the doctor to go away someplace on a real trip, well, I'd sell it like that. You know, it's been the dream of my life to see Paris, France. Oh, I don't know. It sounds crazy, I suppose, but for years I've been telling myself that if we ever got the chance...
How does the doctor feel about it?
Well, I did beat about the bush a little. Said if I got the legacy, that's the way I'd put it. I'd make him take me.
What did he say?
Oh, you know how he is. I haven't heard a serious word out of him since I've known him. No, he said it might make him discontented with Grover's Corners to go traipsing about Europe. Better let well enough alone, he says. Every 2 years we take a trip to the battlefields of the Civil War, and that's enough treat for anyone, he says.
Well, Mr. Webb just admires the way Doc Gibbs knows everything about the Civil War. Mr. Webb's a good mind to give up Napoleon and move over to the Civil War. Only Doc Gibbs being one of the greatest experts in the country just makes him despair.
It's a fact. Doc Gibbs is never so happy as when he's up in Teedham or Gettysburg. Oh, the times I walked over those hills, Myrtle, stopping at every bush and pacing it out like we were going to buy it.
Well, if that second-hand man's really serious about buying it, Julia, you sell it, and then you'll get to see Paris all right. Just keep dropping hints from time to time. That's how I got to see the Atlantic Ocean, you know.
Oh, I'm sorry I mentioned it. Only it seems to me that once in your life before you die, you ought to see a country where they don't talk in English and don't even want to.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you very much. Now we're going to skip a few hours. But first, we want a little more information about the town. Kind of a scientific account, you might say. So I've invited Professor Willard of our state university to sketch in a few details of our past history here. Is Professor Willard here?
I seem to have miscalculated my current coordinates. Here we are.
May I introduce Professor Willard of our state university? A few brief notes, Professor. I'm afraid our time is limited.
Yes. Grover's Corners. Let me see. Grover's Corners lies on the old Pleistocene granite of the Appalachian Range. I may say it's some of the oldest land in the world. We're very proud of that. A shelf of Devonian basalt crosses it with vestiges of Mesozoic shell and some sandstone outcroppings, but that's all more recent, 200, 300 million years old! Some highly interesting fossils have been found in, I may say, unique fossils 2 miles out of town in Sila Peckham's cow pasture. They can be seen at our university's museum at any time, that is, any reasonable time. Shall I read some of Professor Gruber's notes on the meteorological situation, mean precipitation, etc.?
Afraid we won't have time for that, Professor. We may have a few words on the history of man here.
Yes. Geological data. Early Amerindian stock. Cotahatchee tribes. No evidence before the 10th century of this era. Now, entirely disappeared. Possible traces in 3 families towards the end of the 17th century of brachiocephalic, blue-eyed stock. Since then, some Slav and Mediterranean.
And the population, Professor?
Within the town limits, 2,640.
Just a moment, Professor.
Oh, yes. Indeed, the population at the moment is 2,642. The postal district brings in 507 more, making a total of 3,149. Mortality and birth rates constant by McPherson's gauge, 6.032.
Thank you, Professor. We're all very much obliged to you, I'm sure.
Not at all, ma'am. Not at all.
This way, Professor, and thank you again. And now for the political and social report. Mr. Webb? Oh, Mr. Webb?
He'll be out in a minute. He just cut his hand while he was eating an apple.
Thank you, Mrs. Webb.
Charles! Everybody's waiting!
Mr. Webb is publisher and editor of the Grover's Corner Sentinel. It's our local paper, you know.
Well, I shouldn't have to tell you that we're run here by a board of selectmen. All males vote at the age of 21. All women vote indirect. We're lower middle class, sprinkling professional men, 10% illiterate laborers. Politically, we're 86% Republican, 6% Democrat, 4% Socialist, rest indifferent. Religiously, we're 85% Protestant, 12% Catholic, rest indifferent.
Have you any comments, Mr. Webb?
Pretty ordinary town, if you ask me. A little better behaved than most, but probably a lot duller. But the young people seem to love it. 90% of them, after graduating high school, settle down right here, even after they've been away to college.
Now, does anyone in the audience have any questions for Mr. Webb about the town?
Is there much drinking in Grover's Corners?
Well, ma'am, I don't know what you'd call much. Saturday nights, the farm hands meet down in Ellery Greenhouse stable in Hollersome. There's 1 or 2 town drunks, but they're always making remorses every time an intelligence comes to town. No, ma'am, I wouldn't say liquor a regular thing in the household, except for in the medicine chest. Right good for a snake bite. Always was.
Is no one going to talk about?
Come forward, will you? Where we can all hear you. Now, what were you saying?
Is no one going to talk about the social injustice and industrial inequality?
Yes, everybody knows about it. Something terrible. Seems they spend most of their time talking about who's rich and who's poor.
Then why don't they do something about it?
Well, I don't know. I guess we're hunting just like everybody else. To find a way that the diligent and sensible can rise to the top, and the lazy and quarrelsome can sink to the bottom. But it ain't easy to find. Meanwhile, we do all that we can to help those that can't help themselves. And those that do, we leave alone. Are there any other questions?
Excuse me, Mr. Webb. Oh, Mr. Webb, is there any culture or love of beauty in Grover's Corners?
No, ma'am. There isn't much. Not in the sense that you mean. Come to think of it, some girls do play the piano at their high school commencement, but they ain't very happy about it. But maybe this is the place to tell you that we have other pleasures of a kind here. We like watching as the sun comes over the mountain in the morning, and we pay lots of attention to the birds. Yes, we know a great deal about them. And we like watching as the seasons change. But those other things. We know Robinson Crusoe and the Bible, and Handel's Largo and Whistler's Mother, but that's as far as we go.
So I thought. Thank you, Mr. Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Now we're going to get back to the town. All 2,642 have had their dinners and dishes have been washed. There's an early afternoon calm in our town, buzzing and humming from the school buildings. Few buggies out on Main Street, horses dozing at hitching posts. You remember what it was like. Doc Gibbs is in his office, tapping people and making them say ah. Mr. Webb is over there, mowing his lawn. One man in 10 One man in 10 thinks it's a privilege to push his own lawnmower. No, sir. Later than I thought. There are the children coming home from school now.
I know. I'm so happy we're going home. Oh, I can't, Lois. I've got to go home and help my mother. I promised.
Emily, walk simply. Who do you think you are today?
You're terrible, Papa. One minute you're telling me to stand up straight, and the next you're calling me names. I just don't listen to you.
Well, golly, I've never been kissed by such a great lady before.
I know, right? And I can't wait for Friday's game. Yeah, tonight's practice, though. I really do have to work on my pitch. Oh, excuse me, Mrs. Forrest.
Go out and play in the fields, young man. You've got no business playing baseball on Main Street.
Awfully sorry, Mrs. Forrest.
Awfully sorry, Miss.
Look at her over there.
Hello, Emily.
Hello.
You made a fine speech in class today.
Well, I was really ready to talk about the Monroe Doctrine, but last minute Miss Corcoran made me talk about the Louisiana Purchase instead. I worked an awful long time on both.
Gee, it's funny, Emily. From my window up there, I can almost see your hen nights when you're doing your homework up in your room.
Why, can you?
Yeah, you do certainly stick to it, Emily. I don't see how you can sit still that long. I guess you like school?
Well, I feel it's something everyone has to go through.
Yeah.
I don't mind it, really. It passes time.
Yeah. Emily, what do you think? That we can work out a kind of telegraph from your window to mine, and once in a while you could give me a hint about those algebra problems? I don't mean the answers. Of course not, Emily. I just mean a kind of hint or two.
Oh, I think hints are allowed. So, if you get stuck, George, just whistle over to me and I'll give you some hints.
Emily, you're just naturally bright, I guess.
I figure it's just the way a person's born.
Yeah. But you see, I want to be a farmer, and my Uncle Luke says whenever I can come over and help out, and he says if I'm any good, I can just gradually have it.
You mean the house and everything?
Yeah. Well, thanks. I better be getting out to the baseball field now. Thanks for the talk, Emily. Oh, good afternoon, Mrs. Webb.
Good afternoon, George.
So long, Emily.
So long, George.
Emily, come and help me string these beans for the winter. George Gibbs let himself have a real conversation, didn't he? Why, he's growing up. How old will he be?
I don't know.
Let's see. He must be almost 16.
I made a speech in class today, Mama, and I was very good.
You must recite it to your father at supper. What was it about?
The Louisiana Purchase. It was like silk off a spool. I'm gonna make speeches all my life. Are these big enough, Mama?
Try and get them a little bigger if you can.
Mama, will you answer me a question? Serious?
Seriously, dear, not serious.
Seriously. Will you?
Of course I will.
Mama, am I good looking?
Yes, of course you are. All my children have got good features. I'd be ashamed if they hadn't.
Oh, Mama, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, am I pretty?
I already told you. Yes, now that's enough of that. You have a nice, young, pretty face. I've never heard of such foolishness.
Oh, Mama, you never tell us the truth about anything.
I am telling you the truth.
Mama, were you pretty?
Yes, I was, if I do say it. I was the prettiest girl in town. Next to Mammy Cartwright.
Oh, but Mama, you've got to say something about me. Am I pretty enough to get anybody, to get people interested in me?
Emily, you make me tired. Now stop it. You're pretty enough for all normal purposes. Come along now and bring that bowl with you.
Oh, Mama, you're no help at all.
Thank you. Thank you. That'll do. We'll have to interrupt again here. Thank you, Mrs. Webb. Thank you, Emily. You see, there's some more things we want to explore about the town. I think this is a good time to tell you that the Cartwright interests have begun building a new bank in Grover's Corners. Had to go to Vermont for the marble, sorry to say. And they've asked a friend of mine what they should put in the cornerstone for people to dig up 1,000 years from now. Of course, we're putting in a copy of the New York Times and of Mr. Webb's Sentinel. We're kind of interested in this because some scientific fellows have found a way of painting all that reading matter in a glue. Silicate glue that will keep it 1,000, 2,000 years. We're putting in a Bible, the Constitution of the United States, and a copy of William Shakespeare's plays. So, what do you say, folks? What do you think? You know, Babylon once had over 2 million people in it, and yet all we know about them is the name of some kings and copy wheat contracts and contracts for the sale of slaves. Yet every night those families sat down to dinner, father came home from work, smoke went up the chimney, just as now. And even in Greece and Rome, all we know about the real lives of those people is what we can piece together from the joking poems and comedies they wrote for the theater back then. So, I'm going to have a copy of this play put in the cornerstone so people 1,000 years from now will know a few simple facts about us. More than the Treaty of Versailles or the Lindbergh Flight. See what I mean? So, people 1,000 years from now, this is how we were in the provinces north in New York in the early 20th century. This is how we were in our growing up, and in our marrying, and in our living, and in our dying. Time's gone by, it's evening. You can hear choir practice going on in the congregational church. The children are at home doing their schoolwork. The day is running down like a tired clock.
Now look here, everyone. Music's come into the world to give pleasure. Out of your heads, that music's only good when it's loud. You leave loudness to the Methodists. You couldn't beat them, even if you wanted to. Now again, tenors!
So terrible.
Emily, did you get the third problem?
Which?
The third!
Why, yes, George. That's the easiest of them all.
I don't see it, Emily. Can you give me a hint?
I'll tell you one thing. The answer is in yards.
In yards? How do you mean?
In square yards.
Oh, in square yards.
Yes, George, don't you see?
Yeah.
In square yards of wallpaper.
Wallpaper. Oh, I see it now. Thanks a lot, Emily.
You're welcome. My, isn't the moonlight terrible? And choir practice going on? I think if you hold your breath, you can hear the train all the way to Conticook. Hear it?
Mm-hmm. What do you know?
Well, I guess I better get back and try to work.
Good night, Emily, and thanks.
Good night, George.
Now, before I forget it, how many of you will be able to come in Tuesday afternoon and sing at Fred Hershey's wedding? Show your hands. That'll be fine. That'll be right nice. We'll do the same music we did for Jane Throwbridge's last month. And now we'll do Art Thou We or Art Thou Languid? It's a question, ladies and gentlemen. Make it talk. Ready?
Oh, George, can you come down a minute?
Yes, Pa.
Make yourself comfortable, George. I'll only keep you a minute. George, how old are you?
I'm 16, almost 17.
And, what do you want to do after school's over?
Well, you know, Pa, I want to be a farmer on Uncle Luke's farm.
So you're willing, will you? To get up early, to milk and feed the stock, and hoe and hay all day?
Yes, of course, Pa. What do you mean?
Well, George, while I was in my office today, I heard a funny sound. And what do you think it was? It was your mother chopping wood. There you see your mother getting up early, cooking meals all day long, washing and ironing, and she still has to go in the backyard and chop wood. Suppose she just got tired of asking you. She just gave up and decided it's easier to do it herself. And you eat her meals, and you put on the clothes she keeps nice for you, and then you run off and play baseball like she's some hired girl we keep around the house, but that we don't like very much. Well, I knew all I had to do was call your attention to it. Here's a handkerchief, son. George, I've decided to raise your spending money 25 cents a week. Not, of course, for chopping wood for your mother, because that's a present you give her. But because you're getting older, and I imagine you must find lots of things to do with it.
Thanks, Pa.
Let's see. Your payday's tomorrow. You can count on it. Probably Rebecca feels she ought to have some more too. What happened to your mother? Choir practice never as late as this before.
It's only 8:30, Pa.
I don't even know why she's in that old choir. She has an inner voice than an old crow. Traipsing on the street at this hour. About time you're retired, don't you think?
Yes, Pa.
Good night, Martha. Good night, Mr. Foster.
I'll tell Mr. Webb. I know he'll want to put it in the paper.
Good night, Irma. Real nice choir practice, wasn't it? Oh, look at that moon, Myrtle Webb. Potato weather for sure. Well, naturally I didn't want to say a word about it in front of those others, but now that we're alone, really it's the worst scandal that ever was in this town.
What?
Simon Stimson.
Now, Luella.
But Julia, to the organist of a church, drink and drunk year after year? You know he was drunk tonight.
Now, Luella, we all know about Mr. Stimson. We all know about the troubles he's been through. And Dr. Ferguson knows too. And if Dr. Ferguson keeps him on the job, the only thing the rest of us can do is just to not notice it.
Not to notice it? But it's getting worse.
No, it isn't, Luella. It's getting better. I've been in that choir twice as long as you have, and it doesn't happen anywhere near so often. I hate to go to bed on a night like this. I better hurry. Those children will be sitting up till all hours. Good night, Luella.
Can you get home safe, Luella?
Oh, it's as bright as day. I could see Mr. Soames scowling at the window now. You'd think we've been to a dance the way men folk carry on.
We had a real nice time.
You're late enough.
I ain't any later than usual.
And you stopping at the corner to gossip with a lot of hens.
Oh, Frank, don't be grouchy. Come out, smell the heliotrope. What did you do while I was away?
Oh, I read, as usual. What were the ladies gossiping about tonight?
Oh, believe me, Frank, there is something to gossip about.
Sam Simpson far gone, was he?
Worst I'd ever seen him. How'll that end, Frank? Dr. Ferguson can't forgive him forever.
I guess I know more about Simon Simpson's affairs than anybody in this town. Some people ain't made for small town life. I don't know how that'll end, but there's nothing we can do but just leave it alone. Now, come on, get it.
Not yet, Frank. I'm worried about you.
What are you worried about?
Well, I think it's my duty to see that you get a real rest and a change, and if I get that legacy, well, I'm going to insist on it.
Now, Julia, there's no sense in going for that again.
Oh, Frank, you're just unreasonable.
Julia, it's getting late. First thing you know, you'll catch a cold. I gave George a piece of my mind tonight. I reckon you have your wood shop for a while anyway. No. Start heading upstairs.
Always seems there's something to pick up around here. Did you know Miss Fairchild locks her door at night? All people up that part of town do.
It's because they're all getting citified. That's the trouble with them. They haven't got anything for the burgle, and everyone knows it.
Get out, Rebecca. There's only room for one at this window. You're always spoiling everything.
Well, let me look just a minute.
Use your own window.
I did, but there's no moon there. George, you know what I think? Do you? I think the moon's getting nearer and nearer, and there'll be a big explosion!
Rebecca, you don't know anything. If the moon was getting nearer, the men that stay up all night with those big telescopes would tell about it. And before you know it, it'll be all in the newspapers.
George, is the moon shining on South America, Canada, and half the whole world?
Well, probably is.
Most lights are out. No, there's Constable Warren trying a few doors on Main Street. And here comes Editor Webb after putting his paper to bed.
Evening, Betty.
Evening, Mr. Webb.
Quite a moon.
Yep.
All quiet out tonight?
Simon Simpson's rolling around a bit. Just saw his wife heading out to go hunt for him, so I looked the other way. Here he comes now.
Good evening, Simon. Seems the town has done pretty well at settling down for the night. Guess we should do the same. Good evening, Simon. Seems the town has settled down for the night. I guess we should do the same. Can I walk along a ways with you? Good night.
I don't know how that's going to end, Mr. Webb.
Well, he's seen a peck of trouble, one thing after another. Oh, Betty, see my boy smoking any cigarettes? Give him a word, will you? Thinks very highly of you.
I don't think he smokes no cigarettes, Mr. Webb. At least not more than 2 or 3 a year.
That's good to hear. Thank you, Betty. Good night.
Good night, Mr. Webb.
Who is that up there? Is that you, Myrtle?
No, it's me, Papa.
Emily? What are you doing out of bed so late?
I don't know. I just can't sleep yet, Papa. The moonlight is so wonderful. Oh, and the smell of Mrs. Gibbs' heliotrope. Can you smell it?
Yes. Any troubles on your mind, Emily?
Troubles, Papa? No.
Okay, then. Enjoy yourself, but don't let your mother catch you. Good night, Emily.
Good night, Papa.
I never told you about that letter Jane Crawford got from her minister when she was sick. He wrote Jane a letter, and on the envelope, the address was like this. Jane Crawford, the Crawford Farm, Grover's Corners, Sutton County, New Hampshire, the United States of America.
What's funny about that?
But listen, I'm not finished. The United States of America, the continent of North America, the Western Hemisphere, the Earth, the solar system, the universe, the mind of God. That's what it said on the envelope.
What do you know?
And the postman brought it just the same.
What do you know?
That's the end of the first act, friends. 10 minutes intermission. Three years have gone by. It's 1904. Yes, the sun's come up over 1,000 times. Summers and winters have cracked the mountains a bit more, and the rain has brought down some of the dirt. Some babies that weren't even born yet have begun talking regular sentences already. And a number of people who thought they're right young and spry have noticed that they can't bound up a flight of stairs like they used to, without their heart fluttering a little. All that can happen in 1,000 days. Nature's been pushing and contriving in some other ways, too. A number of young people fell in love and got married. Yes, the mountain got bit away a few fractions of an inch. Millions of gallons of water have gone by the mill. And here and there, a new home was set up underneath a roof. Most everybody in the world gets married. You know what I mean? And in our town, there aren't hardly any exceptions. Most everybody in the world climbs into their graves married. The first act was called The Daily Life. This act is called Love and Marriage. There's another act coming after this. I reckon you can guess what that's about. So, 3 years later, it's 1904. It's July 7th, just after high school commencement. That's when most of our young people jump up and get married. As soon as they pass their last examinations in solid geometry and Cicero's orations, they suddenly feel themselves fit to be married. It's early morning, only this time it's been raining. It's been pouring and thundering. Mrs. Gibbs' garden and Mrs. Webb's here, drenched. All those bean poles and pea vines, drenched. Just yesterday on Main Street, the rain looked like curtains being blown along. Maybe gonna get any minute now. There, you can hear the 5:45 for Boston. There's Mrs. Gibbs and Mrs. Webb coming downstairs to make breakfast. I don't have to tell the women in my audience that these ladies I see before them, cook 3 meals a day. One for 20 years, and the other for 40. And no summer vacation. They brought up 2 children apiece, washed, cleaned the house, and never a nervous breakdown. It's like what one of those Middle West poets said. You've got to love life to have life, and you've got to have life to love life. It's what they call a vicious circle.
Giddy up, Bessie.
Here comes Howie Newsom delivering the milk, and there's Cy Crowell delivering the paper like his brother before him.
Morning, Howie.
Morning, Cy. Anything in the papers I ought to know?
Nothing much except we're losing about the best baseball pitcher Grover's Corners ever had, George Gibbs.
Reckon he is.
He could hit and run bases, too.
Yup, mighty fine ball player. Whoa, Bessie. I guess I can stop and talk if I have a mind to.
I don't see how he could give up a thing like that just to get married. Would you, Howie?
Can't tell, Cy. Never had no talent that way. You're up early, Betty.
Seeing if there's anything I can do to prevent a flood. River's been rising all night.
Cy Crowell's all worked up here about George Gibbs retiring from baseball.
Yes, sir. That's the way it goes. Back in '84, we had a player, Cy. Even George Gibbs could have touched him. Went by the name of Hank Todd. Went down to Maine and became a parson. Wonderful ball player. Howie, how does the weather look to you?
Oh, it ain't bad. Think maybe it'll clear up for good.
Good morning, Howie. Do you think it's going to rain again?
Morning, Mrs. Gibbs. It rained so heavy. I think it may clear up.
I certainly hope it will.
How much does she want today?
I'm going to have a house full of relations, Howie. Looks to me like I'll need 2 cream, 3 milk.
My wife says to tell you how we both hope they'll be very happy, Mrs. Gibbs. No, they will.
Well, tell your wife I hope she gets there to the wedding.
Yes, she'll be there. She'll be there if she can. Morning, Mrs. Webb.
Good morning, Mr. Newsom. I told you 4 quarts of milk, but I hope you can spare me another.
Yes. And the 2 cream?
Will it start raining again, Mr. Newsom?
Well, just saying to Mrs. Gibbs is how we may lighten up. Mrs. Newsom wants you to know how we both hope they'll be very happy, Mrs. Webb. No, they will.
Thank you. And thank Miss Newsom. And we're counting on seeing you at the wedding.
Yes, Mrs. Webb, we hope to get there. Couldn't miss it. Come on, Bessie.
Well, Ma, the day's come. You're losing one of your chicks.
Don't start with that, Frank Gibbs. I feel like crying every minute. Sit down and drink your coffee.
The groom's up shaving himself, only there ain't an awful lot to shave. Whistling and singing, like he's glad to leave us. Every now and then he says, I do, to the mirror, but it doesn't sound convincing to me.
Oh, Frank. I've arranged to it and seen he's put warm things on, but... Oh, they're so young. Emily won't think of such things. He'll catch his death of cold within a week.
I was remembering my wedding morning, Julia.
Oh, don't start with that, Frank Gibbs.
I was the scaredest young fella in the state of New Hampshire. I thought I'd make a mistake for sure. And when I saw you come down the aisle, I thought you were the prettiest girl I'd ever seen. The only trouble was that I'd never seen you before. There I was in the Congregational Church, marrying a total stranger.
And how do you think I felt? Weddings are perfectly horrible things. Farces, that's what they are. Here, I've made you something.
Why, Julia Gibbs, French toast.
It ain't hard, and I had to do something.
How'd you sleep last night, Julia?
I heard a lot of the hours struck off.
Yes, I get a shock every time I think of George set up to be a family man. That great gangling thing. No, Julia, there's nothing so terrifying in the world as a son. The relation between father and son is the darnest, awkwardest.
Well, mother-daughter's no picnic either.
We have a lot of troubles, but that's none of our business. Everybody's right through their own troubles.
Yes. People are meant to go through life 2 by 2. It ain't natural to be lonesome.
Julia, do you want to know one of the things I was afraid of when I married you?
I'll go along with you.
I was afraid we wouldn't have material for conversation more than lasts us a few weeks. I was afraid we'd run out and eat our meals in silence. That's a fact. Well, you and I have been conversing now for 20 years without any noticeable barren spells.
Well, good weather, bad weather, it ain't very choice, but I always find something to say. Did you hear Rebecca stirring around upstairs?
No. Only day of the year, Rebecca has been managing everybody's business up there. She's hiding in her room. I got the impression she's crying.
Oh, Lord's sakes, this has got to stop. Rebecca, come and get your breakfast.
Good morning, everybody. Only 5 more hours to live.
George Gibbs, where are you going?
Just stepping across the grass to see my girl.
Well, put on your overshoes. It's raining torrents.
Oh, Ma, it's just a step.
You'll catch a cold and cough all through the service.
George, do as your mother tells you.
You can kill yourself in any weather, but while you're in my house, you live wisely. Thank you. Maybe Mrs. Webb isn't used to callers at 7 in the morning. Here, take a cup of coffee first.
Be back in a minute. Good morning, Mother Webb.
Goodness, you frightened me. Now, George, you can come in a minute out of the wet, but you know I can't ask you in.
Why not?
George, you know as well as I do. The groom can't see the bride on his wedding day, not until he sees her in church.
Oh, that's just a superstition. Oh, good morning, Mr. Webb.
Good morning, George.
Mr. Webb, you don't believe in that superstition, do you?
Well, George, there's a lot of common sense in some superstition.
Millions have followed it, George, and you don't want to be the first to fly in the face of custom.
Oh, how's Emily?
She hasn't waked up yet. I haven't heard a sound out of her.
Emily's asleep?
No wonder. We were up till all hours sewing and packing. Now, I'll tell you what I'll do. You sit down here with Mr. Webb and drink this cup of coffee. And I'll go upstairs and see she doesn't come down and surprise you. Here's some bacon, too. But don't be long about it.
Well, George, how are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Oh. Mr. Webb, what sense could there be in a superstition like that?
Well, you see, on a girl's wedding morning, her head have to be full of clothing and one thing or another. Don't you think that's probably it?
Yes. I just never thought of that.
Girl have to be mighty nervous on her wedding day.
I wish a fella could just get married without all that marching up and down.
Oh, George, every man that's ever lived has felt that way about it. But it's been no use, my boy. The women folk have built up the weddings. For a while now, the women have had it all their own. Man looks pretty small at a wedding. All those beautiful women standing shoulder to shoulder, making sure the knot is tied in a mighty public way.
But you believe in it, don't you, Mr. Webb?
Yes. Marriage is a wonderful thing. Don't you misunderstand me, my boy. Wonderful thing. Don't forget that.
No, sir. Mr. Webb, how old were you when you got married?
Well, you see, I've been away to college and taken some years, but Mrs. Webb, she was about Emily's age when we got married. But George, age hasn't much to do with it as amongst as, other things.
Mr. Webb, what were you going to say?
Was I going to say something? You know, this reminds me of something my father told me when I got married. Charles, he said, Charles, best thing to do, show her who's boss. First thing, give her an order, even if it don't make sense, just so she'll learn to obey. And if anything about your wife irritates you at all, conversation or anything, just walk out. That'll make it clear to her. And never, never tell your wife how much money you make. Never.
Well, Mr. Webb, I don't think I could
So I took the opposite of my father's advice, and I've been happy ever since. Let that be a lesson, you, George. Never take advice on personal matters. You gonna raise chickens on your farm?
What?
You gonna raise chickens on your farm?
Well, Uncle Luke's never been much interested, but I always thought
A book came into my office the other day about the philo system of raising chickens. I think you should read it. Thinking of starting in a small way in my backyard, and I'm going to put an incubator in the cellar.
Charles, are you talking about that old incubator again? I thought you two be talking about things worthwhile.
Well, Myrtle, if you want to give the boy some advice, I'll go upstairs and I'll leave you alone with him.
George, Emily's got to come downstairs and eat her breakfast. She sends you her love, but she doesn't want to lay eyes on you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Well, Myrtle, I guess you don't know about that older superstition.
What do you mean, Charles?
Ever since the cavemen, no bridegroom should see his father-in-law on the day of the wedding, or near it. Now, remember that.
Thank you very much, Mr. and Mrs. Webb. Now we're going to have to interrupt again here. You see, we want to know how all this began. This wedding, this plan to spend a lifetime together. Now I'm awfully interested in how such big things begin. You know how it is, you're 21 or 22, and you make some decisions and wish you're 70, you've been a lawyer for 50 years, and that white-haired lady by your side has eaten over 50,000 meals with you. How do such things begin? George and Emily will show you now the conversation they had when they first knew that. Well, as the saying goes, they were meant for one another. But before they do, I want you to remember what it was like to have been very young, particularly the days when you were first in love, when you felt like a person sleepwalking and you didn't quite know what street you were on and you didn't quite hear everything that was said to you. Just a little crazy. Will you remember that, please? They'll be coming out of high school at 3 o'clock now. George has just been elected president of the junior class, and as it is June, he'll be president of the senior class all next year. Emily has just been elected secretary and treasurer. I don't have to tell you how important that is. Yep, there they are coming down Main Street now.
I know, that test was so difficult today. Oh, I can't, Louise. I've got to go home. Oh, Ernestine, can you come over later and do Latin? That sister is just the worst. Tell your mother you have to. Oh, goodbye, Helen. Goodbye, Fred.
I know, right? I can't wait for Friday's game and practice tonight, right? I know, right? I know. I can't wait. Can I carry your books home for you, Emily?
Thank you. It isn't far.
Oh, excuse me just a minute, Emily. Say, Bob, if I'm a little late, start practice anyway, and give Herb some of those long high ones.
I can do that for you.
See you guys later at practice.
Goodbye, Lizzie.
Oh, goodbye, Lizzie. I'm awfully glad you were elected too, Emily.
Thank you.
Emily, why are you mad at me?
I'm not mad at you.
You've been treating me so funny lately.
Well, since you asked me, I might as well say it right out. George. Oh, goodbye, Miss Corcoran.
Goodbye, Miss Corcoran. What is it?
I don't like the whole change that's come over you in the last year. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but I've got to tell the truth and shame the devil.
Change? What do you mean?
Well, up to a year ago, I used to like you a lot. And I used to watch you as you did everything because we'd been friends so long. And then you began spending all your time at baseball, and you never stopped to speak to anybody anymore. Not even to your own family you didn't. And George, it's a fact. You've got awful stuck up and conceited, and all the girls say so. They may not say so to your face, but that's what they've got to say about you behind your back, and it hurts me to hear him say it, but I've got to agree with them a little. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, George, but I can't be sorry I said it.
I'm glad you said it, Emily. I just didn't think that such a thing was happening to me. I guess it's hard for a fella not to have some faults creep into his character.
I always expect a man to be perfect, and I think he should be.
Oh, I don't think it's possible to be perfect, Emily.
Well, my father is, and as far as I can see, your father is. There's no reason why you shouldn't be too.
Well, I think it's the other way round, that men are naturally good, but girls are.
Oh, well, you might as well know right now that I am not perfect. It's not as easy for a girl to be as perfect as a man because we girls are more nervous. Now, I'm sorry I said all that about you. I don't know what made me say it.
Emily.
I can see it's not the truth at all, and I suddenly feel it isn't important anyway.
Emily, would you like an ice cream soda or something before you go home?
Well, thank you. I would.
Oh, hello, Stu. How are you? Good afternoon, Mrs. Slocum.
Hello, George. Hello, Emily. Well, you have? Well, Emily Webb, what have you been crying about?
Oh, she just had an awful scare, Mrs. Morgan. She almost got run over by that hardware store wagon. People say that Tom Huckins drives like a crazy man.
Well, now, you take a drink of water. You look all shook up. I tell you, you gotta look both ways before crossing Main Street these days. Gets worse every year. Well, you have.
I'll have a strawberry phosphate. Thank you, Mrs. Morgan.
No, Emily, have an ice cream soda with me. 2 strawberry ice cream sodas, Mrs. Morgan.
2 strawberry ice cream sodas? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There are 225 horse growers' corners, the minute I'm talking to you. State inspector was just in here yesterday. Now they're bringing in these automobiles? Yeah. Best thing to do is just stay home. I tell you, you gotta look both. I mean, I remember when a dog could just go to sleep in the middle of Main Street all day and nothing would come along to disturb him. There they are. Enjoy them. Yes, Mrs. Oates, what can I do for you?
They're so expensive.
No, don't worry about that. We're celebrating our election after all, and Do you know what else I'm celebrating about?
No?
I'm celebrating because I have a friend that tells me everything that ought to be told me.
Oh, George, please don't think of that. I don't know why I said it. It's not true.
No, you stick to it, Emily. And I'm glad you spoke to me the way you did, but you'll see. I'm gonna change. I'm gonna change so quick. You'll see I'm gonna make such a big change. And Emily, can I ask you for a favor?
What?
If I go away to State Agriculture College next year, will you write me a letter once in a while?
I certainly will. I certainly will, George. Well, it certainly seems that being away 3 years, you'd get sort of out of touch with things. Maybe letters from Grover's Corners wouldn't be so interesting after a while. You know, Grover's Corners isn't a very important place when you think of all of New Hampshire, but I think it's a very nice town.
The day wouldn't come when I wouldn't want to know everything that's going on here. I know that's true, Emily.
Well, I'll try to make my letters interesting.
You know, Emily, whenever I meet a farmer, I always make sure to ask him if it's important to go to agriculture school, to be a good farmer.
Why, George?
Yeah, and some of them say it's even a waste of time and that you could get all that information out of the pamphlets the government sends out. And Uncle Luke's getting old. He's about and ready for me to start taking over the farm. Tomorrow, if I could.
My.
Yeah, and like you said, being gone all that time and other places, meeting other people. Gosh, if anything like that could happen, I don't want to go away. I guess new people aren't better than the old ones. I bet they never are. And Emily, you're as good as a friend as I've got, and I don't want to go away and meet the other people in other towns.
But George, maybe it's very important for you to go and learn all about that. Cattle judging and soils and those things. Of course, I don't know.
Emily, I'm gonna change my mind. I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna go. I'm gonna tell Pa about it tonight.
Boy, George, I don't see why you have to decide right now. I mean, it's a whole year away.
Listen, I'm glad you spoke to me the way you did, and I'm glad you told me about that fault in my character. What you said was right, but there was one thing wrong in it, and that's when you said I wasn't noticing people for about a year now, and you, for instance. Why, you say you were watching me when I did everything. I was doing the same about you all the time. Why, sure, you were one of the chief people I always thought about, and I always made sure to know where you were and who you were sitting with on the bleachers, and for 3 days now I've been trying to walk home with you, but something's always gotten in the way. Yesterday I was leaning up against the wall, and then you walked home with Miss Corcoran.
George, life's awful funny. How could I have known? Why, I thought...
Listen, Emily. I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to agriculture school anymore. I think that once you've found a person you're fond of, I mean a person who's fond of you too, and likes you enough to be interested in your character, well, I think that's just as important as college is, and even more so, that's what I think.
I think it's awfully important too, George.
Emily?
Yes, George?
Emily, if I make that big change, would you be? Could you be?
I am now. I always have been.
So, I guess this was an important talk we've been having.
Yes. Yes.
Wait just a minute and I'll walk you home. Mrs. Morgan, I'll have to go home and get the money that I owe you. I'll be back in just a minute.
What's that, George Gibbs? Do you mean to tell me?
Yes, but I had my reasons, Mrs. Morgan. Oh, here, take my gold watch in the meantime while I go get your money.
That's all right. Keep your watch. I'll trust you.
I'll be back in 5 minutes.
I'll trust it 10 years, George. Not a day over. Got all of your shock, Emily?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Morgan. It was nothing.
I'm ready.
Well, now we're ready to get on with the wedding. There are a lot of things to be said about a wedding. There are a lot of thoughts that go on during a wedding. We can't get them all into one wedding, naturally, especially one in Grover's Corners, where they're awfully plain and short. In this wedding, I play the minister, so that gives me the right to say a few more things about it. For a while now, this play gets pretty serious. Some start to say that marriage is a sacrament. I don't quite know what that means, but I think I can guess. It's like what Mrs. Gibbs said a few minutes ago. People are meant to live 2 by 2. This is a good wedding, but people are so put together that even at a good wedding, there's a lot of confusion deep down in people's minds. And we thought that that ought to be in our play too. The real hero of the scene isn't even on stage at all. And do you know who that is? Well, it's like what one of those European fellas said. Every child born into the world is nature's attempt at making a perfect human being. Nature's been pushing and striving for some time now, and we all know that nature's interested in quantity, but I think she's interested in quality too. That's why I'm in the ministry. And let's not forget about all the other witnesses at this wedding. The ancestors, millions of them, set out to live 2 by 2. Also, millions of them. Well, that was all my sermon. Twa'n't very long anyway.
I don't know why on earth I should be crying. I suppose there's nothing to cry about. It came over me at breakfast this morning. There was Emily, eating her breakfast as she's done for 17 years. And now she's off to eat it in someone else's house. I suppose that's it. And Emily, she suddenly said I can't eat another mouthful, and she put her head down on the table and she cried. Oh, I've got to say it. You know, there's something downright cruel about sending our girls off into marriage this way. I hope some of her girlfriends have told her a thing or two. It's cruel, I know, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I went into it blind as a bat myself. The whole world's wrong. That's what's the matter. There they come.
All right, that's enough of that. That'll do. Stop it! Used to have a lot of that kind of thing at weddings. The old days, Rome and later. But we're more civilized now. So they say.
No, Ma, listen to me. I don't want to grow old. Why is everybody pushing me so?
Why, George, you wanted this.
No, Ma, listen to me.
No, George, you're a man now.
No, Ma, listen to me. For the last time I ask you, all I want to be is just to be a fella.
George! Anyone should hear you. Stop it! I'm ashamed of you!
What? Where's Emily?
Oh, George, you gave me such a turn.
Cheer up, Ma. I'm getting married.
Oof, give me a moment to catch my breath.
Ooh, say, Mom, you save Thursday nights. Me and Emily are going to come over for dinner every Thursday night. You'll see. Why are you crying, Ma? Come on, we have to get ready for this.
I've never felt so alone in my whole life. And George, over there, looking so... I hate him! Oh, I wish I were dead. Papa! Papa!
Emily, now you mustn't get upset.
But Papa, I don't want to get married.
Emily, everything is going to be okay.
Why can't I stay for a while, just as I am? Let's go away.
Emily, think for a minute.
But don't you remember what you used to say? All the time you used to say, all the time that I was your girl. There's got to be lots of places we can go. I'll work for you. I can keep the house.
Emily, you mustn't say such things. You're just nervous. George, will you come here for a minute? You're getting married to the finest young fellow. George is a fine young fellow.
But Papa...
George, I'm giving away my daughter. You think you can take care of her?
I want to, Mr. Webb. I want to try, Emily. I want to do my best. I love you. I need you.
Well, if you love me, help me. All I want is someone to love me.
I want to try, Emily. I want to.
And I mean forever. Do you hear? Forever and ever.
Come now, you must go. Everything will be okay.
George, take this woman Emily to be your wedded wife, to have
perfectly lovely wedding, loveliest wedding I ever saw. Oh, I do love a good wedding, don't you? Doesn't she make a lovely bride?
I do.
Do you, Emily, take this man George to be your wedded husband, to have...
Don't know when I've been to such a lovely wedding, but I always cry. Don't know why it is, but I always cry. I just like to see young people happy, don't you? Oh, I think it's lovely.
Do you have the rings? I've married over 200 couples in my day. Do I believe in it? I don't know. M marries N, millions of them. Cottage, the go-kart, Sunday afternoon drives in the Ford, the first rheumatism, grandchildren, the second rheumatism, deathbed, the reading of the will. Once in 1,000 times, it's interesting. Well, let's have Mendelssohn's Wedding March.
Lovely couple. Oh, I've never been to such a nice wedding. I'm sure they'll be happy. I always say, happiness, that's the great thing. The important thing is to be happy.
That's all the second act, folks. We'll have a brief pause and then we'll begin Act 3. This time 9 years have gone by, friends. Summer 1913. Gradual changes in Grover's Corners. Horses are getting rarer. Farmers coming into town in Fords. Most everybody locks their doors at night now. There ain't been any burglars yet, but everybody's heard about them. You'd be surprised, though. On the whole, things don't change much around here. This is certainly an important part of Grover's Corners. It's on a hilltop, a windy hilltop, with lots of sky and clouds. Often lots of sun and moon and stars, too. You come up here on a fine afternoon, you see range on range of hills. Awful blue they are. Up by Lake Sunapee and Lake Winnipesaukee, and way up if you've got a glass, you can see the White Mountains and Mount Washington, where Conway and North Conway are. Of course, our favorite mountain, Mount Monadnock's right here, and the towns that lie around it. Jaffrey and East Jaffrey, Peterborough and Dublin. And over there, quite a ways down, is Grover's Corners. Yes, beautiful spot up here. Mountain laurel and lilac. I often wonder why people like to get buried in Woodlawn in Brooklyn when they can spend the same time up here in New Hampshire. Over there are the old stones, 1670 to 1680. Strong-minded people that come a long way to be independent. Summer people walk around there, laughing at the funny words on the tombstones. It don't do any harm. Genealogists come up from Boston, get paid by city people for looking up their ancestors. They want to make sure they're daughters of the Mayflower and of the American Revolution. I guess that don't do any harm either. Wherever you come near the human race, there's layers and layers of nonsense. Over here are some Civil War veterans, iron flags on their graves. New Hampshire boys had a notion that the Union ought to be kept together, although they'd never seen more than 50 miles of it themselves. But they knew the name, friends. They knew the name. The United States of America. The United States of America, and they went and died about it. This is the new part of the cemetery. See your friend Mrs. Gibbs and, let me see, Mr. Stimson, organist at the Congregational Church, and Mrs. Soames, who enjoyed the wedding so. You remember. Oh, and a lot of others too. Mr. Webb's boy Wallace, whose appendix burst on a Boy Scout trip to Crawford Notch. Yes, a whole lot of sorrow has sort of quieted down up here. People just wild with grief bring the relatives up to this hill, and you know how it is. And time, and sunny days, and rainy days, and snow. We're all glad they're in a beautiful place, and we're coming up here ourselves when our fit's over. There's some things that we all know, but we don't take them out and look at them very often. We all know that something is eternal. And it ain't houses, and it ain't names, and it ain't the earth, and it ain't even the stars. Deep down, everybody knows something is eternal. And that something has to do with human beings. All the greatest people that have ever lived have been telling us that for 5,000 years, and yet you'd be surprised how they're often losing hold of it. Deep down, there's something eternal about every human being. You know as well as I do that the dead don't stay interested in us living people for very long. Gradually, they lose hold of the earth, and the ambitions they had, and the pleasures they had, the things they suffered, and the people they loved. They get weaned away from the earth. That's the way I like to put it. Weaned away. They stay up here while the earth part of them burns away, burns out. Slowly they become indifferent to what's going on in Grover's Corners. They're waiting. They're waiting for something they feel is coming. Something important and great. Aren't they waiting for the eternal part of them to come out clear? Some of the things they'll say maybe will hurt your feelings, but it's just the way it is. Mother and daughter, husband and wife, enemy and enemy, money and miser. All those terribly important things kind of grow pale around here. What's left when memory's gone? And your identity, Mrs. Smith? Well, there are some living people. There's Joe Stoddard, our undertaker, supervising a new-made grave, and here comes a Grover's Corners girl who left town to go out west.
Good afternoon, Joe Stoddard.
Good afternoon, good afternoon. Let me see now. Do I know you?
I'm Sam Craig.
Gracious sakes alive of all people. I should know to be back for the funeral. Been away a long time, Sam.
Yes. I've been away over 12 years. I'm in business out in Buffalo now, Joe, but I was in the East when I got the news of my cousin Seth, so I thought I'd combine things a little and come and see the old home. You look well.
Yes, can't complain. Very sad our journey today, Samantha.
Yes.
Yes. You know, I always say I hate to supervise when a young person is taken. They'll be here in a few minutes now. I had to come in early today. My son's supervising at the home.
Well, Mrs. McCarty. I used to do tours for her after school. She had the lumbago.
Yes. We brought Mrs. McCarty here a number of years ago now.
Why, this is my Aunt Julia. I'd forgotten that she'd... Of course.
Yes. Doc Gabe's lost his wife 2-3 years ago around this time. And today's another pretty bad blow for him, too.
It's my sister Carrie's girl, Sam Craig.
I'm always uncomfortable when they're around.
Simon.
Do they choose their own verses much, Joe?
No, not usual. Mostly the bereaved pick a verse.
Doesn't sound like Aunt Julia. There aren't many of those Hersey sisters left now. Let's see. Where are... I wanted to look at my father's and mother's.
Over there with the Craigs, Avenue F.
He was organist at church, wasn't he? Drank a lot, we used to say.
Nobody was supposed to know about it. He's in a peck of trouble. Took his own life, you know.
Oh, did he?
Hung himself in the attic. They tried to hush it up, but of course it got around. You can see his epitaph there. It ain't a verse exactly.
Why, it's just some notes of music. What is it?
Oh, I wouldn't know. It was wrote up in the Boston papers at the time.
Joe? What did she die of?
Who?
My cousin.
Oh, didn't you hear? Had some trouble bringing a baby into the world. 'Twas her second, though. There's a little boy, about 4 years old.
The grave's going to be over there?
Yes. There ain't much more room over here among the Gibbses, so they're opening up a whole new Gibbs section over by Avenue B. You'll excuse me now. I see they're coming.
Who is it, Julia?
Oh, it's my daughter-in-law, Emily Webb.
Well, I declare, your up here must have been awful muddy. What did she die of, Julia?
In childbirth.
Childbirth. I'd almost forgotten about that. My, wasn't life awful and wonderful?
Wonderful, was it?
Simon, now remember.
I remember Emily's wedding. Wasn't it a lovely wedding? And I remember when she read the class poem at graduation exercises. Emily was one of the brightest girls ever graduated from high school. I've heard Principal Wilkins say so time after time. I called on them at their new farm, right before I died. Perfectly beautiful farm.
It's on the same road we lived on.
Yep, right smart farm.
I always liked that hymn. I was hoping they'd sing a hymn.
Hello. Hello, Emily.
Hello, Miss Gibbs.
Hello, Mother Gibbs.
Emily?
Hello. It's raining.
They'll be gone soon, dear. Just rest yourself.
It seems thousands and thousands of years since I've... Papa remembered that was my favorite hymn. Oh, I wish I'd been here a long time. I don't like being new here. How do you do, Mr. Simpson?
How do you do, Emily?
Mother Gibbs, George and I made the farm into just the best place you ever saw. We thought of you all the time. We wanted to show you the barn and the great long cement drinking fountain for the stock. We bought that out of the money you left us.
I did?
Don't you remember, Mother Gibbs? The legacy you left us? Why, it was over $350.
Yes, Emily, yes.
Well, there's a patent device on the drinking fountain so that it never overflows and it never sinks below a certain line they have there. It's fine. Won't be the same to George without me, but it's a lovely farm. Live people don't understand, do they?
No, dear. Not very much.
They're sort of like shut up in little boxes. Seems as though I knew them last 1,000 years ago. My little boy is spending the day at Mrs. Carter's. Oh, Mr. Carter, my little boy is spending the day at your house.
Is he?
Yes, he loves it there. Oh, Mother Gibbs, we drive a Ford, too. Never gives us any trouble. Well, I don't drive, though. Mother Gibbs, when does this feeling go away of being one of them? How long does it take?
Just wait and be patient.
I know. Look, they're finished. They're going. Look, Father Gibbs is bringing some of my flowers to you. He looks just like George, doesn't he? Oh, I never realized how troubled and how in the dark live persons are. Look at him. I loved him so. From morning till night, that's all they are. Troubled.
A little cooler than it was. Yes. The rain's cooled off a little.
Those northeast winds never changed much, did they?
If it isn't rain, it's a 3-day blow.
But, Mother Gibbs, one can go back. One can go back and live again. I know it. I feel it. Why, just for a moment, I was thinking about the farm, and for a minute, I was there. My baby was on my lap as plain as day.
Yes, of course you can.
One can go back and live those days over again?
All I can say, Emily, is don't.
But it is true, isn't it? One can live back there again?
Yes. Some have tried, but soon come back here.
Don't do it, Emily.
Emily, don't. It's not what you think it'd be.
But I won't live over a sad day. I'll choose a happy one. I'll choose the day I first knew I loved George. Why should that be painful?
Not only live it, but you watch yourself living it.
Yes?
And as you watch yourself, you know what they don't there never know. You see the future. You know what's going to happen after.
But is that painful? Why?
That's not the only reason why you shouldn't do it, Emily. When you've been here longer, you'll understand that our life here is to forget all that, to think only of what's ahead. When you've been here longer, you'll understand.
Oh, but Mother Gibbs, how can I ever forget that life? It's all I know. It's all I had.
Emily, really, it isn't wise.
But it's a thing I must know for myself. I'll choose a happy day anyway.
No. Choose an unimportant day. Choose the least important day of your life. It'll be important enough.
And it can't be since I was married or since the baby was born. I can choose a birthday, can't I? I'll choose my 12th birthday.
All right. February 11th, 1899. A Tuesday. Do you want any special time of day?
Oh, I want the whole day.
We'll begin at dawn. You remember it had been snowing for several days, but it stopped the night before. They'd begun clearing the roads. The sun's coming up.
Oh, wait, there's Main Street. Oh, and there's Mrs. Morgan's drugstore before she changed it. Oh, and the livery stable.
Yes, it's 1899. This is 14 years ago.
Oh, this is the town I knew as a little girl. Oh, and the white fence that used to surround our house. Oh, I'd forgotten that. Oh, I love it so. Are they inside?
Yes, your mother will be coming downstairs in a minute to make breakfast.
Will she?
And do you remember your father had been gone for several days? He came back on the early morning train.
No.
He'd been back at his college to make a speech in Western New York, at Clinton.
Why, look! Oh, there's Howie Newsom. Oh, and there's our policewoman. But she's dead. She died.
Whoa, Bessie! Bessie! Morning, Betty.
Morning, Howie.
You're up early.
Been rescuing a party. Darn near froze to death down near Polish town, Thar. Got drunk and lay out in the snowdrifts. Thought he was dead when I shook him.
Oh, wait, there's Joe Crowell.
Morning, Mrs. Warren. Morning, Howie.
Children, Wally, Emily, time to get up.
Mama. Oh, I'm here. Oh, how young Mama looks. I didn't know Mama was ever that young.
You can come and dress by the kitchen fire if you like, but hurry. Good morning, Mr. Newsom. It's cold.
10 below by my bar, Mrs. Webb.
Think of it. Keep yourself wrapped up.
Mama, I can't find my blue hair ribbon anywhere.
Just open your eyes, dear, that's all. I laid it out for you special on the dresser there. If it were a snake, it would bite you.
Yes, yes.
Morning, Betty.
Morning, Mr. Webb. You're up early?
Yep, just been back to my old college up in New York State. Any trouble around here?
Was called up this morning to rescue a Polish fella. Darn near froze to death, he was.
Must get it in the paper.
Not much.
Papa.
Morning, Mother.
How'd it go, Charles?
Okay, fine, I guess. Told him a couple of things. Everything right around here?
Yes. Can't think of anything that's happened special. Been right cold. Howie took it's 10 below over to his barn.
Colder than that at Hamilton College. Students' ears were falling off. It ain't Christian. Any mistakes in the paper?
None that I noticed. Coffee's ready when you want it. Don't forget, Charles. It's Emily's birthday. Did you remember to get her something?
Yes, it's right here. Where's my girl? Where's my birthday girl?
Don't interrupt her now, Charles. You'll see her at breakfast. She's slow enough as it is. Hurry up, children. It's 7 o'clock. Now I don't want to call you again.
Oh, I can't bear it anymore. They're so young and beautiful. Why did they ever have to get old? Oh, Mama, I'm here. I'm grown up. Oh, I love you all. Everything. Oh, I can't look at everything hard enough. Good morning, Mama.
Well, now, dear, a very happy birthday to my girl and many happy returns. There are some surprises waiting for you on the kitchen counter.
Oh, Mama, you shouldn't have. I can't.
But birthday or no birthday, I want you to eat your breakfast good and slow. I want you to grow up and be a good, strong girl. That in the blue paper is from your Aunt Carrie, and I reckon you can guess who brought the postcard album. I found it on the doorstep when I brought in the milk. George Gibbs must have come out in the cold pretty early. Right nice of him.
Oh, George. I had forgotten that.
Chew that bacon good and slow. It'll help keep you warm on a cold day.
Oh, Mama, look at me for 1 minute as though you really saw me. Mama, 14 years have gone by. I'm dead. You're a grandmother now, Mama. I married George Gibbs, Mama. Wally's dead, too. His appendix burst on a camping trip to North Conway. We felt just terrible about it, Mama. Don't you remember? Oh, but
Just for a minute, we're all together again. Oh, Mama, just for a minute, we're happy. Let's look at one another. That in the yellow paper is something I found among your grandmother's things in the attic. You're old enough to wear it now, and I thought you'd like it. Oh, and this is from you. It's just lovely. It's just what I wanted. It's beautiful. Well, I'd hoped you'd like it. Hunted all over. Your Aunt Nora couldn't find one in Concord, so I had to send all the way to Boston. Wally has something for you, too. He made it in manual training class, and he's very proud of it. Be sure to make a big fuss about it. Your father has a surprise for you, too. Don't know what it is myself. Shh, here he comes.
Where's my girl? Where's my birthday girl?
I can't go on. It all goes so fast. We don't have time to look at one another. I didn't realize. So all this is going on and we never notice. Take me back up the hill to my grave. But first, wait. One more look. Goodbye. Goodbye, world. Goodbye, Grover's Corners. Mama. And Papa. Glad a clock's ticking. Oh, and Mama sunflowers. And food. Oh, and coffee. And fresh iron dresses. Oh, and hot baths. And sleeping. And waking up. Oh, world, you're too wonderful for anyone to realize you. Do any human beings ever realize life while they live it? Every minute?
No. Saints and the poets, maybe they do some.
I'm ready to go back. Were you happy? No. I should have listened to you. That's all human beings are, just blind people. Look, it's clearing up. The stars are coming out. Oh, Mr. Stimpson, I should have listened to them.
Yes, now you know. Now you know that's what it was like to be alive. To move about in a cloud of ignorance. To go up and down, trampling on the feelings of those about you. To spend and waste time as though you had a million years. To be always at the mercy of one self-centered passion or another. Yes, now you know. That's the happy existence that you wanted to go back to. Ignorance and blindness.
Simon Stimpson, that ain't the whole truth and you know it. Emily, look at that star. I forget its name.
My boy Joel was a sailor. He used to sit on the porch evenings and tell them all by name. Yes, sir, wonderful.
Stars do make mighty good company.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Here's one of them coming.
That's funny. Take now, one of them got time to be here right now. Goodness sakes.
Mother Gibbs, it's George. Dear, just rest yourself. It's George.
And my boy Joel, who knew the stars, He used to say it took millions of years for that speck of light to get to the Earth. Don't seem like a body could believe it, but that's what he used to say. Millions of years.
Goodness sakes. That ain't no way to behave.
He ought to be home.
Mother Gibbs. Emily. They don't understand, do they? No, dear. They don't understand.
Somebody's asleep in Grover's Corners. There are a few lights on. Shorty Hawkins in the depot. Just watch the Albany train go by. At the livery stable, somebody's setting up late and talking. Yes, it's clearing up. There are the stars doing their old crisscross journeys in the sky. Scholars haven't settled on the matter yet, but seem to think that there are no living beings up there. Chalk or fire. Only this one's been straining away all the time to make something of itself. Straining so bad that every 16 hours everybody lies down and gets a rest. O'clock in Grover's Corners. You get a good rest too. Good night.